All right, guys, what's up? Welcome back to the 5th ever episode of the Firestarters podcast. Today we have a guest, Michelle. It's pretty cool. Everyone give her a round of applause.
Our first ever woman on this show. Wow. Believe it or not, we are inclusive.
Give
here.
that another couple seconds. For that.
All right, Michelle, so maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I think that's good.
That's all the info we're getting today, I guess.
Yes.
I don't even know anything about it.
Yeah, I feel like we need a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, wait. So
religion,
Michelle,
where you came
she
from.
comes from like a Catholic / what?
Well,
Protestant
I
family?
come from a very multicultural family, so I was raised going to like Catholic church and Greek Orthodox church and like German Lutheran church, and like with all of those like cultures and like customs growing up.
Fun?
It was very unique. It was fun, yeah.
And
So,
today was your first time at like a non-denominational kind of church, correct?
yeah, it was really interesting. So.
What'd you think about it?
I thought that it was definitely different from especially like the Catholic services that I've been to, but I think it was probably different in a good way, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. And then we were kind of talking about what we should talk about, and we were at a Bible study the other day, and the verse came up on like the man is like over the woman, or what's the exact verse?
Women should
How it should be.
like wives should submit to their husbands and things
yeah.
like that.
So we're talking about that verse, and then you kind of want to like explain on your thought process on that.
yeah, so for me, I definitely have more of like a liberalist / libertarian approach to kind of like religion, or just I guess anything like philosophy, morals, anything in general. And when I say liberalist, I don't mean like the commonly like there's like a common misconception that like liberal means like left-leaning in terms of politics, but I mean more like the actual definition of liberalist as in like open-minded to new ideas.
Well, the
And
exact definition is just a lot.
What?
That's it. That's literally what the
A lot?
Liberalist.
If you say apply liberally, that means use like the product a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty much what it
Liberalist, but essentially like for me it's like very important when like kind of like hearing like Bible verses or just like anything in general to kind of view them or to not view them at face value and to kind of exercise almost skepticism to an extent. I mean, I'm reluctant to use the word skepticism because I feel as if that kind of has like the implication of being agnostic, but
No,
that is not the case.
I
so.
understand that. I was raised to question everything, and even sometimes I question. I don't really anymore, but I used to question God when I was just starting out.
But I don't even necessarily mean like questioning God, but just in terms of like the Bible as a book, kind of
I'll show some
taking into
examples.
account
Oh,
like
yeah,
historical context, taking into account that it wasn't written in English. There's multiple different versions. Don't take it literally.
Well,
I think a good way to phrase it is I don't take the Bible literally, but I believe everything in the Bible is true. And some stories that kind of go to what she's talking about is like the heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left. That's obviously a metaphor. Like an evil person's heart's not going to go to the left side of their body or to like a good person on the right side. That's like metaphorically. And God and Jesus spoke a lot in like stories and metaphors. Like in Psalm 62, it says, I read here in verse 2, that God is my rock, my salvation, and my fortress. This is a very good, comforting news. As we read it seriously and truthfully, but we do not believe that God is literally a rock, much less any rock. So, if so, how big is he? Is he igneous, sedimentary, or metamorphic? So just like stuff like that. Like obviously God's not an actual rock. And then verses like...
can I say something until then?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm sure you haven't watched too much of the podcast, but the second episode, I actually did talk about how the Bible may not be 100% accurate, but you can go watch it for people viewing if they haven't seen that one. But yeah, I go into decent depth into it, basically talking about newer versions and variations and verses that have been just completely removed from the Bible altogether, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of it too is like translations, because like as you know, there's many translations of the Bible, like King James Version probably being like one of the oldest translated into English, and like the original like documentations and scrolls of the Bible were in Hebrew, I believe. And so like translating that from those, like, I mean, yes, we have experts who do that, but now there's like so many different
versions.
like, yeah, you can see like when you read some of the Bible, you can tell like if you have two different versions like side by side, for example, like the NIV and the
NSV.
Yeah, NSV and like the English, what's that one called?
English Standard Version.
Yeah,
Yes.
English Standard Version. Like when you read them side by side, for example, reading some of the more morbid like stories of the Old Testament, you can see in the English version like they're a lot more gracious, and God is shown as like a more gracious God than he is in those times. Than in the NIV, it's a lot more like morbid, and it really depending on like
Hardcore.
which one you read. Yeah, exactly, hardcore. So.
And then another example of metaphorically speaking in the Bible is John 10 verse 7. So Jesus again said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go into and out and find the pasture." Now Jesus is obviously not a sheep gate. Like, that's obvious. I think everyone understands this at this point. So,
doesn't it say somewhere in the Bible that God's like teachings aren't supposed to be simple? They're supposed to be made complicated, so that way people who actually have the heart and mind to pursue it will like
understand
do
it.
so.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back to the let's see what verse it is, but when a woman submits to her husband, I just want to clarify that, like, that's a really hard Bible verse for a lot of people to read, but like we've been saying, you got to dive deep into it, and like the wording it uses in the Hebrew and stuff actually more translates to the man like caters as much as he can to the woman, and the woman does the same to the man, and that way there's like this perfect working together in unison, because obviously women aren't below men. I think that's a big misconception from that verse.
Yeah, I
but
think
more of working
that's-
together, and like men and women are under God. That's the perfect kind of relationship.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that at Nana's house, Pam Fisher.
Yeah.
When she was talking about her and John's relationship, how like it goes hand in hand, and like having them both put each other up keeps like an equal relationship. But as soon as like one person thinks that they need more than the other, and the other person, like for example, like doesn't submit to them, then it becomes an unbalanced relationship. So like saying that, I think it means like submitting means like, to build each other up, and like, yeah.
And then I think that this kind of relates to like the idea of like kind of, I mean, I guess just like fundamentalist religion versus kind of the idea of like diving deeper and not taking it at face value. Because if you look globally at fundamentalist religions, whether it's like...
Do you want to maybe describe what that means?
Okay. Yeah, so a fundamentalist is someone who takes like the word of whatever religious text that they use at exactly face value. So if they read the line, "God is my rock," or they would like take it literally as like God is
In a rock.
a rock.
It's not a rock. That's not true. That means the Bible's inaccurate.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that misconception. And if you look at it, like, it's a very finicky thing in some ways because, for example, like, it can lead to a lot of negative stereotypes in some ways. Like, if you look, for example, at, like, Wahhabist Muslims versus, like, other Muslims who aren't necessarily as fundamentalist, it kind of leads to harmful stereotypes and, like, just harm in general. And so I think that it's important to remember that, like, that there is historical context. This book was written and, like, compiled by humans. Humans are, like, prone to error. And also, like, just historical context. Like, earlier we were talking about the kind of pagan, like, some of the pagan, like, influences and origins of Christianity, or, like, some of the origins in, like, Babylon and, like, Mesopotamia, and, like, the story of Noah's Ark coming from that region, and, like, those pagan stories. And I think that it doesn't, like, understanding that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't, like, learn those stories and believe in those stories, but it just, like, helps exercise, like, caution and kind of, in a way, like, allows you to dive even deeper and have like a closer relationship with God and like the text itself.
So when you talk about the two sects of Islam,
Well, I think there's more than two, but
well, yeah, I'm saying those specific two, one being more strict and one being more lenient. Do you think that kind of has like a correspondence to Catholicism versus like Protestantism?
No, because there are plenty of Catholics that aren't fundamentalist.
Okay.
Just because you're Catholic doesn't mean you're fundamentalist. There are plenty of Christians that are fundamentalist and not Catholic.
Yeah.
So that might be like another misconception as well. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, we love Catholics. Like, some of the Catholics I know, like, are...
My mother is Catholic.
they love Jesus with all their heart.
Yeah.
And that's all that really counts, right? But there's just, some like, differences. This whole another episode, because
I think they're just differences.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've never met a Catholic who wasn't, like,
Good.
like, every Catholic I've ever met has been, like, one of the nicest people, like, to
And
stand for,
No, and I think that's like another thing that's important to remember is that it's okay to disagree, and like by having, because I'm sure that there are like aspects of Christianity where I do not agree with like the other people sitting at this table, but that doesn't mean that we can't get along and have like productive conversations about like religion or anything else in general.
Yeah.
True.
And so I think that's also very important. And I think it not only goes for like, I think that's just like an overarching concept that can be applied to like anyone, no matter like differences. So
Speaking of differences, should we bring up the Q&A about the gay thing?
I
I can read the question if you like.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So this person wanted to stay anonymous. She's asking for a friend. I somewhat recently had a really close Christian friend of mine share that she struggles with affection to the same sex. She is working on fighting these desires and leaning on the Lord for his help. However, I'm not really sure what to do with that information. I'm praying for her, of course, but in what way am I able to follow up and encourage her? It's something that's definitely not talked about in the church and is hard to ask the Christians around me because they mostly all know her.
Okay. So the reason why they're all looking at me right now is because my brother is actually gay. My family is very accepting of everything. I'm a Christian. My brother's gay. Everyone else is an atheist. They don't really care. Sometimes we combat on things, whatnot. Doesn't really matter. The fact is I'm not going to be able to change his mind on that. He's made that pretty clear. When it comes to the desire of it, however, it's going to be something that Satan puts in someone's head. And I mean, I'm not trying to say it like, oh, you're a bad person because Satan's manipulating you. I physically mean that Satan is just trying to get in your head and tell you, oh, do this, do that. And I kind of wanted to talk about how to, I'm not saying like stop it, but like how to go about it. The number one thing is that you aren't going to be able to beat Satan on your own. It's just never going to happen. You're not going to be able to say, okay, Satan, without any help from any angel, from God himself, I'm not going to be able to, or I'm going to be able to take you on. It's just not going to happen. So, and that's the whole thing, is that sin is the separation of God, or separation from God. And the only way to combat it is to get closer to God, which is growing your relationship with him and whatnot. And the more that you love Christ, the more that you start to gain your relationship with God, the less you will even start getting a desire to sin. That's what happened to me over the past couple of months when I've been working on it. I get even less of a desire to do it.
I have a great talking point that we actually heard in church this morning. And he was talking about how sin is almost like candy or like worldly things. So like, big houses, whatever, money is like candy. And then God's word is more of like kale.
Broccoli.
Broccoli. Because like,
except I love broccoli.
The earthly things satisfy you fast and like right when you want it. But then after that, it starts giving you issues, cavities. It's not great for your body. And then broccoli, on the other hand, it's not as fun to take. And I'm not saying Christianity isn't fun at all, but like it's not as fleshly pleasing as like some worldly things are. But like you eat broccoli, it's not as like wonderful in the moment, but after that there's like health benefits. It grows muscle, like it helps you in that way. So that's kind of
it helps you physically in the way that growing your relationship with God helps you spiritually.
Yeah.
And the way I kind of look at it is that, yeah, the more that you practice that, the less you'll feel anything for it.
Yeah, so I have two things to touch on here. First of all, I think it's important, like, because if I had read that comment and replied to it personally, I would have said, you do you. I mean, and that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, well, the thing to add to that is, like, being gay is just like any other sin. And, like, some people, like, some people will be like, that's their personality. Why would God want to take that away from them? But some people's personality is killing people. Some people's personality is, like, stealing. Some people is lying.
Yeah,
it's like part of their,
diabetics, all that. And I'm not saying that it's the same thing in any means, but it's mostly what's going to stop it or going to help it is growing your relationship with God. Because when you grow your relationship with God, I'm blanking right now. I had something, but...
Well, you know, like,
go ahead.
We're saying gay people isn't, like, the worst sin out there. That doesn't exist. All sin is, like, when you really look at it, it's equal. Sure, they have different earthly results, but when you really look at it, there's only one way that your sins can be forgiven, and that's through
I
Jesus.
figured out what I was going to say.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say there's no way that you're going to be able to resist sin. At points, you're going to just accept it if you don't have a relationship with him. Like,
Yeah.
my brother is an atheist. He doesn't have a relationship with God, so obviously he's not going to combat it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks it's okay. And I mean, to him it might be, but...
Well, it's the same thing. We have desires
gonna
to,
judge
like,
it.
lie, steal, or think selfishly, and that's the same thing.
We're not... Oh, sorry. Go
No, it's
ahead.
okay. And I think that this is another thing that's, for me, like, being raised, like, partial, like, kind of Catholic. I think it's important, like, this idea of, like, again, like, not taking the Bible at face value, just, like, not taking anything exactly at face value, and this idea of, like, being able to learn from it, because they were talking about this idea of, like, doing things for the long term and not being, like, very, like, oriented in terms of, like, short term only. And I think that that's, like, a very important lesson that we can all learn from. But I think it's also important to, like, exercise common sense and this idea of kind of, like, self-flagellation. Like, yes, you can't constantly, like, think in the short term. You do have to do things that aren't necessarily fun in the moment but benefit in the long term. But there is a balance. I believe in moderation personally, and so in that way, I think that might be a place where, like, we disagree. Like, I do eat candy every now and again. I do like chocolate.
Actually, I have something about that.
That doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, I think.
No, of course not.
And the other thing is that I believe that because they were reading, like, a Bible verse earlier, and I think it said something about, like, this idea of, like, community and, like, loving others the same way you love yourself, and how, like, this idea of God making us, like, in his image. Is that what it says, I believe?
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
Bible verse, definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so...
And I think that... Sorry.
No, you're good. I'll just say it after.
Yeah. And so I think that's also important to realize that, like, if you hate yourself, you can't have a relationship with God. And so that's why I think it's important to find this kind of balance of, like not necessarily, like, loving yourself as in, like, being, like, narcissistic or self-centered,
But how
but
you
just,
would be
like,
treated.
accepting yourself for, like, who you are, regardless of, like, whether you're perfect or not, and then kind of, like, using that as a way to kind of, like, accept, like, other people as well with their imperfections.
Yeah, that's the first step to coming to Christianity, is accepting that you're broken and not perfect, and accepting that Jesus is the one that can cover you for that through his salvation. Wolfgang, what were you gonna?
Lewis, you want to go first?
Yeah. So I wanted to go back to the conversation about being gay. I mean, I feel like I have a pretty different opinion between, like, I mean, I don't really know about you, but, like, Luke and Wolfgang. You know, I mean, if that's what you're into, then that's what you're into. I mean, like, I feel like
I agree.
like love, like, I feel like love is love, but is, like, it's a different kind of love once you bring into the, like, account of, like, attraction, like, attracted to someone physically. Like, you can love someone because of their, like, them as a person all you want, but as soon, I think the only time it becomes an issue is when there is pride involved. Like, when you come out as gay and you feel like you, like, deserve more or have pride. And like, yeah, I don't think, like, yes, it may be a sin, but I feel like it's a little bit different if you feel prideful towards your sexuality or like who you're attracted to as a person. But,
And I just want to clarify, the Bible does not like say being gay is a good thing. It's a sin. I just want to clarify that. But lots of things are sins, and we still do them.
like some of them being like semi-natural, like lying is pretty.
Every sin
natural.
is equal at the same.
You could go bomb an orphanage and lie, but
Okay.
like it's just okay. I don't mean to bring up the bombing an orphanage, but it's a pretty exponential sin compared to say a lie.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it has the same like it has different consequences on earth, but there's only one way it can be taken away or washed clean, and that's through Jesus. So in a way, they're all kind of equal.
Okay, so the main thing that I wanted to end this off with, you guys have nothing else to say, right?
Not really.
Okay. So the main thing is that we as Christians cannot...
Well, actually, wait, I kind of do want to say one more thing. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was going to talk a little bit about, I don't know how it came up, but in my head I was thinking about it, but like, I was thinking about like natural sin. And for example, like lust is something that we are pretty much all born with and go through as of like hormones and, growing of age, and stuff like that. And yes, it can be solved, but that was just another point that I wanted to bring in about like some sin that is like comes upon you from your brain and from your body, So
The Bible does say, though, you have the power within you. If you want to change from that you have the power. God will give you the power to refrain from those sins.
No, I agree. Like you can like refrain yourself from it, but I'm saying like it's
very
where
difficult.
it comes from is, I mean, yes, it may not come from, God, but like of our bodies and our hormones.
Okay. So the number one thing, if you were to take away one thing from this entire question that we just got asked, and the only reason why we said grow your relationship with God and things like that is because they asked us how to help. And, I mean, we wouldn't really be judging them. And that's the main thing. We as Christians cannot judge other people because we, as like them, sin. And only God is allowed to judge them. That means if someone
only God truly can judge them fairly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that means if you are a liar, if you are an adulterer, which, first of all, everybody sins. So there's no way that you can say, oh, I sin
I'm
less
perfect,
than you. Like, that doesn't exist. Because in one way or another, someone is screwing something up.
They always all have the same consequence.
Yeah. And so you can't be like, oh, being gay is bad. I mean, you can say you shouldn't be if...
As you like the same as you say you shouldn't lie.
Because it's a sin. Yeah, like you shouldn't lie. But it's not saying that we hate people who are gay.
Yeah, we still love them.
That is the
Hopefully not.
last thing that we are saying.
Love the people, hate the sin. That's
Of course. Yeah. The last thing that you ever want to tell somebody is that you hate them, because we can't hate them if we're
We
followers of
can't
Christ.
because we sin. We sin
Exactly.
all the time, no matter what.
So if we hate people who sin, we hate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Going back to what you were saying.
exactly. So I agree with you that, like you said, they shouldn't be judged. They shouldn't be like frowned upon. Well,
all sin should be frowned
yeah,
upon.
all sins should be frowned upon, but the person themselves shouldn't be hated. They should be loved.
And only love can fix those problems.
The only reason why I said, like, grow your relationship with God so that way your love of Christ will help you lose the desire to sin is because these people are specifically asking for, like, ways for us to help them. And they kept it anonymous, so we're going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. We all kind of came to agreement at the end. So
Are there any more like questions?
Do you have anything else to say?
There's a lot. Michelle, anything else to add to that, or?
I think I said everything that I wanted to say.
Okay, good.
Great. Very
I guess we can
nice.
just choose another question if you guys.
And
are
sure.
down.
I mean, I'm sitting here comfortably.
Hi guys, I love the podcast. I'm listening from Paris, France. I was born and raised as a Christian, but didn't really believe or was not really committed to God. I started gaining more interest 6 months ago, and now I pray every day. I read the Bible, try to learn as much as possible about Christianity and the other religions because I want to have a good relationship with God. However, there is so much to learn and know about Christianity that it can sometimes be confusing. My question is, what should I do as a Christian? How should I pray? How should I read my Bible daily? Should I read my Bible? How should I read my Bible daily? Is there something that most Christians do daily apart from praying? For example, writing notes. What should I do? I want to be a better Christian, and I want to know what I can do besides just pray. What do you guys do as Christians every day?
Okay, so
I think we all answered this, and
yeah,
we'll start with you, Lewis.
I think so. Well, I want to start with like this idea of like a foundation, like.
The question, by the way, was by ARTMF_. But you'll know it's you.
Cool.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So me and Luke, I want to talk a little bit about like foundation, because me and Luke, we were born in very
households.
Yeah, very Christian households. Like my dad is a pastor. His dad is just like the absolute, insane.
Super Christian.
Yeah, super Christian.
That's an understatement right there.
I feel like with me, I've kind of grown up with it, and especially my dad, like being able to help me with all of these things in my religion, and questions that I have, like I feel like he's someone that I can go to, but because I feel like I don't really know a lot about like yes, I'm independent with my faith, but as of like starting it and beginning to grow, and I've always had like a set mindset for my my faith. But I'm curious because I know that Wolfgang, I mean, it's probably been mentioned a lot, but Wolfgang is pretty new to this Christianity thingy, and within the past year, and I'm just curious because I feel like they have kind of similar stories. Like she said 6 months ago, like
I think it's a he.
Or he, her, it doesn't matter, but
They.
like with they, like with Wolfgang, I just want to know, like, where were you 6 months ago? What did you do?
Well, Lewis, what do you do besides reading the Bible and praying? Just so we can finish that off.
Well, I mean, if that's all that you do, I mean, I feel like as long as you can create yourself a relationship, and because people say like read the Bible, but there's a lot of ways you can read the Bible. You can read it for understanding. You can read it as communication with God, and like
or answers to questions.
Yeah, answers to questions. You need you're struggling with something, like how do I help myself with blah blah blah. You can open up the Bible and
find the answer.
Yeah, find the answer to that. So yeah, Wolfgang.
Well,
very curious.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
Sure, I'll just try and get it out before I forget what I'm gonna say. So, I mean, I would say, like, first of all, like, I guess this would be an example of, like, something you could do, kind of, like, talking with, like, other people that, like, both agree and disagree with you, and kind of, like, learning from them, like, because, like, my dad, like, or I think there's, like, some sort of proverb that says, like, a wise man learns from everyone, and I think that, like, it's important to take that to heart, because as I already, like, mentioned, like, I don't think I agree with, like, these people on, like, everything in terms of, like, religion or just any general subject. And so, but by having these conversations, I think it's, like, productive in, like, kind of moving forward and, like, understanding, like, your relationship with, like, God and whatnot better. And then I think, like, the other thing that I would say as, like, my personal opinion is, like, as I previously mentioned, I have more of, like, a libertarian approach. So I would say, like, read the Bible, interpret it, like, do what works for you, like, but do what makes you the best person possible. Like, interpret the Bible however you would like to, but interpret it in, like, the way that makes you the best version of yourself.
Exactly. Like, especially, like, in your relationship with God, like, whatever works for you to build that relationship and build that connection, I mean, that's what you should do.
Well,
I mean,
this is dangerous ground, Ron, when you're saying interpret it to any way you want it to. You got to make sure it stays true to the actual fundamentals of what it's saying. But yeah, we all have different ways. Like, every time you read a Bible verse, it's slightly different. It means something different to different people.
So what I kind of like to do, and I'll talk about what I was like 6 months ago in a second, but basically when you sit down with your Bible, what you typically are supposed to do, well, at least this is what I do in my eyes, is you're supposed to sit down and pray that God will give you what he wants you to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then the interpretation that you get is what he is giving you. Don't say this out loud, obviously, but in your head, pray to him and say, God, I want this book. I want it to tell me what you want it to tell me. And
as long as we're not changing the words for our benefit and our like let's say I change this verse so it like doesn't make me feel like I'm sinning.
I've done that plenty of
Yeah.
times, and that's kind of when I was going to tie it to 6 months ago. And I wouldn't read the Bible often, I'm not going to lie. My relationship with him I thought was half decent, but looking back, it wasn't. Even now, I mean, I'm getting better, but I'm not going to say that I'm a righteous man or even close to anything of the sort. But 6 months ago, I would probably read my Bible maybe once a month to make sure that I would be like, okay, God, we're good. All right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you next month. But I never really prayed often. If I did, it was kind of a like, hey, God, do this for me. Hey, God, if you want this, do this. I was kind of a gimme Christian at that point, and I don't know. I'm glad that I'm not anymore for the most part. I still do it sometimes, but I try to stop myself if I do.
Yeah, I think it's I was just thinking about this. It kind of also goes back to that thing that we were talking about, like with relationships in marriage, and how like it's I mean, all the time, I feel like I'm a gimme Christian. Like I find myself asking him, just like when I pray, it's only me asking him like, hey, God, like I would love it if like this happened in my life, and if this happened in my life, if this happened, stuff like that. But I feel like because Christianity is pretty much the only religion that you have a relationship with your God, and I feel like that's what it has to be.
The only one you don't have to work to be saved.
Exactly. We're not like writing, what are those called, the letters to get into heaven, or the indulgences or anything like that. But it's when
I think that actually was a medieval like Christian
like in the what was it
Christian
called?
practice
What was it
in the
called?
Catholic Church.
No,
They invented
Protestant
the purgatory.
Yeah, no,
Protestant
The Catholics
Reformation?
invented the purgatory in the medieval ages to
Make
yeah,
some
that's
money.
what we were
Bring-
referencing.
yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
plenty of different branches, sects, different like parts of Christianity have kind of gone out and said, oh, well, you need to do this to get into heaven, or you need to do this to get a loved one into heaven. But yeah, the Catholics did that a lot, and they made it kind of a requirement. Like they made certain requirements for you to get into heaven. And that's not what God does. I mean, besides the fact that you have to have a relationship with him and you have to strive to be like Jesus, other than that, you have no real, like, you don't have to sacrifice anything besides sin, and you don't need to, like, sacrifice animals. You don't need to sacrifice your firstborn son, things like that.
Well, the thing is that you get forgiveness, so even if you do still sin, you're still saved.
I actually wrote about this. 1 second. Let me find it real quick. I said, in the Old Testament, lots of people like to think that you can earn a place in heaven by sacrificing things. And I mean, when Jesus came down, he said, that's not the case. We don't want you sacrificing animals and things like that. We want you sacrificing yourself and your spirit and submitting yourself to God, because that's what's going to get you into heaven.
Yeah. And then it's just going to go back to the question he has. Like we're talking about, like, just a give me Christian. That's the problem, like I had as well. But you got to share what you learn. That's a big part of being a Christian, is like share what you know. Share it with others, because it's not all about you. It's about telling others about the good news and what Jesus did for us. So yeah, share the word, be strong in it, and then just keep learning as much as you possibly can about it, because that'll make your faith grow stronger. That'll make you able to like answer questions better when people ask you things. And it'll bring you closer to God as well. So as far as just, keep praying, keep reading the Bible. Make sure the Bible is always your main source of information. And like devotionals are great, but the Bible is your true source of information. And devotionals can help you kind of expand your knowledge on certain things, but it's definitely not as important as reading the Bible. And then just be like, I had a little story this week of just being a good person feels really good. Like, I guess I'll just tell the story. I was at a gas station and this person didn't have, their card wasn't working, and they tried every single gas station. I was like, oh yeah, I'll pay you for on this one. They're like, no, it'll work on this one. Don't worry, you can go. I was like, okay. So I just pull out a little bit and then stop and just watch in the rearview mirror, and I see them next to the gas station just like begging it for it to work, and it's not working. So I walk over there, I pay for their gas, and kind of make their day. And I'm about to leave, and then this guy runs out of his car with jumper cables, and so I had to help him start his car. And it just felt so good to help people. Even though I lost money on helping somebody, it just feels so good to help people and to just be a good person. So I would encourage, just be as much as like Jesus as you can. And that's really all you have to do. Yeah, just like try to get closer to him, be like Jesus, share the things Jesus has done for you, and there's really not much you can do after that. Yeah. So I think we answered that question.
I kind of want to talk about one of two things, and it's up to you guys. I'll ask you. One is kind of something that I've been praying for probably about the past 6 months. I've been asking God, like, because God likes trinities, obviously. Yep. He's made a lot.
He loves triangles.
Loves them.
Illuminati.
Yeah, loves.
maybe not that, but
that was sarcasm.
Triangles are cool.
God loves threes. I think it's his second favorite number, but after 7. But basically, I asked, what are the 3 things that will help me in almost anything that I do in my life? So I can either go over that one, or we can go over if God is all-knowing and omniscient.
Let's go about that on the next episode, because that'll take a while to talk about.
That one? Okay.
No, let's do that. The first one. We talked about the
first
3.
one?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is, I'm going to give you backstory. I like to cook a lot, so I kind of think of it that way. I was asking for it while I was going, and it was weird because
while you were cooking.
Yeah.
Okay.
He gave me something immediately, wouldn't give me the other 2, and then about 3 months later, the second one popped into my head. I was like, "Here's the second one," and then like 2 weeks later, or two weeks ago, about 3 months later, the third one popped into my head, and then it said, and he said, "Go share this on the podcast, whatever." So he kind of called it like the Trinity of success. At least that's what I heard. And the 3 things are moderation, variety, and consistency. When it comes to moderation, you don't want to have too much of things, obviously. You don't want to go overboard on anything. You always want to have a good balance between things, which then brings you to variety, which is having kind of a diversified set of things that you can then talk about or use in your toolbox.
So maybe like as an example, don't read the same Bible verse over and over
or just
every day,
don't only use reading. You can also pray. You can do things like we're doing, spread the word of God. You can
worship,
go to church, listen to worship music, fast. There's so many different things. Use variety to your advantage. You can go ahead. I'll talk about consistency in a second.
I think that another way that you could interpret variety is to kind of interpret that as like learning from like other people and like surrounding yourself with a variety of people, not necessarily all like Christians, like reading the same Bible verses. I know that like growing up, I had many Jewish friends, and so I attended Passover every year, and it was like a very informative experience, and I really appreciated it and learned a lot of stuff from it because, I mean, I think that like, again, like it's important to like understand, and you can really learn from everyone regardless of they believe in the Bible or not. So I think that's another way to interpret variety.
That's a great point. Yeah, because like Wolfgang, that's why you're so valuable in a way too, because you've been in the enemy's camp for most of your life.
Yeah,
and you know other strategies.
Trust me, I have plenty of variety when it comes to different opinions in my life. But I'm saying, like, in everything you do, you want variety. When I kind of thought about it as cooking, it's like, when you have moderation, you don't want to add too much of one thing or else it might screw the entire taste up. You want to have a variety of spices, and you always want to keep the recipe consistent or else it's going to be messed up. And that brings me to consistency, which is like, if you're trying to work out, you want to work out consistently or else you won't gain muscle.
Also variety, yeah.
Yeah, and same thing. All 3 of them connect in my head, and it was kind of weird because it was a click. As soon as I heard it, I was like, I got to write this down really quickly. But But yeah, they all kind of intertwine with each other, and they can all be brought to another. But yeah, consistency, especially reading in the Word to help strengthen your spirit. You need to get in the Word a lot consistently. You also need to pray a lot consistently, and you need to talk to other people in the community who might know God, and maybe even some that don't. And that's why I'm so blessed. I think that I'm blessed that I have an atheist family sometimes, because they like to challenge what I say, and then I can research it myself, and then I can go into it, and then I can talk about it, which is kind of what I said last episode with the whole creation thing. It's because they challenged me, and I was like, okay, well, I'll look into it, and I'll figure out why.
That's really good. Yeah, that's awesome. Sweet. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. Michelle, thanks so much for coming on and being brave enough to talk with us boys.
Real.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I didn't realize I had to be brave to talk with boys.
Wow.
Also, Michelle's really smart. She's like, so the things she says definitely have to be taken into account, which is cool. But yeah.
Would they not have to be taken into account if I was dumb?
Yes.
No, but
Well-
they wouldn't be as valuable. It's like reading a kindergarten book to figure out about science, or to read.
Yeah, you're like a college level.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad.
You're not an idiot, that's for sure. We've got a lot of idiots on this podcast.
You're
That's-
credible. Is
No
that
comment. No comment.
Incredible.
All right, guys. Well, go follow us on Spotify, leave some reviews, ask us some questions on Instagram DMs, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Evolutionary.